For the record, my name is Brian Worrell, District 4 City Councilor, and I'm the Chair of the Boston City Council Committee on Ways and Means. Today is March 3rd, 2025. It is 10:06 a.m. This hearing is being recorded. It is also being live streamed at boston.gov/city-council-tv and broadcast on Xfinity Channel 8, RCN Channel 82, and Fios Channel 964. Written comments may be sent to the committee email at ccc.wm@boston.gov and will be made part of the record and available to all councilors. Public testimony will be taken at the end of this hearing. Individuals will be called on in the order in which they signed up and will have 2 minutes to testify. If you're interested in testifying in person, please add your name to the sign-up sheet near the entrance of the chamber. If you're looking to testify virtually, please email our Central Staff Liaison, Ron Cobb, at ron.cobb@boston.gov for the link, and your name will be added to the list. Today's hearing is on 2 dockets. Docket number 0458, message and order authorizing the City of Boston to submit a state of interest to the Massachusetts School Building Authority core program for Madison Park Technical Vocational High School pursuant to MGLC 70B-5. The statement of interest describes and explains the deficiencies within the school facility that prevents Boston Public Schools from delivering the desired educational program. And docket number 0459, message and order authorizing for your approval and order authorizing the City of Boston to submit to the Massachusetts School Building Authority statements of interest for the accelerated repair program for the following schools: Boston Adult Technical Academy, Hurley K-8 School, Mildred Avenue K-8 School, Mendel Elementary School, Mary Lyon Pilot High School, Joyce Kilmer Lower School, Margarita Munzie Academy, Orchard Gardens K-8 School, Charter K-6 Elementary School. The statements of interest describe and explain the deficiencies in the priority category for which the City of Boston may be invited to apply to the Massachusetts School Building Authority in the future. Priority 5 - replacement, renovation, or modernization of the school facility systems, such as roof, windows, boilers, heating, and ventilation systems to increase energy conservation and decrease energy-related costs in a school facility. I'd first like to start it off with a few remarks and then pass it off to my council colleagues. Just want to give like a bit of background. I know at recent Boston Public School Committee meetings, members had good questions about the criteria used to determine which schools are selected for repairs in these programs. So it would be good to hear from the administration more about the metrics used to determine which buildings get selected into each of the ARP and core programs, as well as an update to the current school buildings and facilities currently meeting those criteria. I'd like to just for the record, let everyone know that we've been joined by, in order of arrival, Councilor Flynn, Councilor Murphy, and also Councilor Braden. I'd like to now pass it over to Councilor Flynn for any opening remarks.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you to the administration panel that's here. I'm looking forward to hearing the testimony about this important partnership the City of Boston has with the Mass State Building Authority and obviously the State Treasurer's Office as well. I do want to acknowledge how important this program is in the city, supporting an opportunity for our children and students and teachers to learn and teach in healthy, safe schools. Again, thank you, Mr. Chair. I want to learn more about this program, how it impacts these older buildings. And again, want to say thank you to the administration team that's here.
Thank you. Councilor Murphy, Councilor, you have the floor.
Thank you, and thank you to this panel. Looking forward to hearing your testimony this morning. Our relationship, Brian, with the Mass MSBA is important. We've been here, this is my 4th year, and we've been able to pass several funding for important work needed. I often tell the story of my first few years in BPS, the school I was at, the kindergarten classroom, the bathroom above would leak in. So several times a year, I would be out buying a new rug and trying to And also cleaning out the ventilation system, and the windows sometimes would need to be nailed shut. So always, know firsthand how important it is that we finally really take a hard look and put the money where it's needed to invest in the school. Our teachers, our community, our students deserve that. And then also talking about, funding for new buildings. So want to hear about the timeline. I know there's been a lot of conversation around Madison Park High, and if we go this route, what does that mean to the community input and promises that may have already been made, and how do we move forward that way? So looking forward to this important conversation. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilor Braden. Councilor, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Good morning, everyone. Good to see you all. I'm just interested to just get into the details of the MSBA proposals that we're putting forward and learning more. I'm very pleased to see that the Maryland Pilot High School is on the list. The building is on the list. I know the Maryland Pilot High School is going to close, but the building is going to be used for elementary school. So I think that's wonderful that they're going to get new windows and doors, but we'll find out more as we go on in our conversation. So thank you all for being here this morning, and look forward to it. Thank you, sir.
Thank you. I'd like to now introduce today's panelists testifying on the behalf of the administration. Carlton Jones, Executive Director for Public Facilities Department. Delaverne Stanislaus, Chief of Capital Planning for Boston Public Schools. Brian Ford, Chief Operating Officer for Boston Public Schools. And Brian McLaughlin, Senior Project Manager for Public Facilities Department. The floor is now yours.
All right, good morning, Mr. Chair, Council President. As introduced, Carlton Jones, Executive Director of the Public Facilities Department, here with my colleagues from Boston Public Schools. Before we turn them over to them, I'd like to introduce my colleague from PFD, Senior Project Manager, Brian McLaughlin.
Thank you, Carl. Thank you, councilors. We have a slide deck here that, oh, there we go. Thank you. Thank you, Council Worrell. The Mass School Building Authority is a state authority that oversees funding of public school capital projects in the Commonwealth of Massachusetts. It's a reimbursement agency that's funded through the Massachusetts sales tax. It focuses on working with local communities to create affordable, sustainable, and energy-efficient schools across the Commonwealth. It has two programs: the Accelerated Repair Program, which is for roofs, windows, doors. In the first time this year, the Accelerated Repair Program will include heat pump conversion projects. The second program is the Core Program. That's for larger school builds, renovations. Examples of that with the City of Boston would be Josiah Quincy Upper School, Boston Arts Academy, Dearborn, the Carter School, which will open up this September. In recent submissions to the MSBA, the Shaw Taylor, and the Batson Academy. First step in the MSBA process is to submit a statement of interest. That is what they call their application. Each statement of interest application requires a vote of the school committee and the city council. Today, the presentation will go through the schools that the city and BPS intend to submit to the MSBA for consideration in both the Accelerated Repair Program and the Core Program, with the request of the council to favorably support these submissions to the MSBA at a subsequent council meeting. With that, first I'm going to turn it over to Brian Ford, Chief Operating Officer for Boston Public Schools, who will provide an overview of the Accelerated Repair Program projects that are being put forward, and then to Chief Stanislaw, who will go through the core submission. Brian?
Good morning, Council. Thank you for having me. So with our accelerated repair eligibility, we've gone through a number of different metrics so our SOIs are able to be put in, our statements of interest. We looked at roofs that are greater than 25 years old, windows that are greater than 30, and the project cost estimate is greater than $250,000. We'll also look for a couple of other metrics that the MSBA requires, such as not being overcrowded, continuing to have an educational use, and just like Mr. McLaughlin said before, heat pumps and the application of that being new this year has a couple of extra metrics that we need to factor in, meaning that it must not have steam piping, it must be less than 30 years old, and the application must be submitted for a roof if it is under 15 years old, over 15 years old. So the overall condition of the asset is factored in many different ways for us. So we had the asset of each of the individual buildings as well as our opportunity index. This year we had the facilities condition assessment that helped us aid in the understanding and submission of this data, as well as the long-term facilities plan in order to make sure that we're not investing in buildings that are not going to fit the needs of our student over a long period of time. We also looked at a couple of the same things that I mentioned on the previous slide, which is 30 plus years old for the windows and 25 years old for the roofs. Here you can see the submission of the 3 different categories that we had: Boston Adult Technical Academy, Hurley K through 8, and the Mildred Avenue K through 8 School for roofs, Mendel Elementary, Mary Lyons Pilot High School, and Joyce Kilmer Lower School for windows and doors, and Margarita Muniz, Orchard Gardens, and the Trotter for the heat pump, with Orchard Gardens also getting a roof addition. Here you'll also notice that we have the Mary Lyons School, which we did announce is going to have a configuration change in school year 26-27. We plan on making sure that this building is continued to be used over the for an educational purpose for the Mary Lyons lower community going forward. And now I'm going to pass it over to Chief of Capital Planning, Delvern Stanislaus.
Thank you, Chief Ford. Good morning, everyone. Del Stanislaus, Chief of Capital Planning. I am going to go into the core program submission for the MSBA. I am excited to present Madison Park Technical Vocational High School for the Massachusetts School Building Authority's 2025 core program. I'll first walk you through our deep commitment to the Madison Park redesign project, the work we've done so far, the lengthy community engagement that shaped it, and why pursuing MSBA funding is the best and most strategic path forward to see this promise through. As we all know, Madison Park deserves a world-class facility that matches the excellence of its students and programs.
Yeah, you could just say next slide and go to the next slide.
Okay.
Yeah.
The City of Boston have a strong partnership with the MSBA, and our collaboration has led to significant progress on several key core program projects. Ruth Batson Academy, in December 2024, the school was invited into the MSBA core program. We are excited to officially begin the project this summer. Shaw Taylor Elementary School, after being invited into the program in December of 2023, this program is now preparing to enter the feasibility stage. The Carter School accepted into the core program in 2017. The Carter School is on track to be completed and ready to welcome students this fall. JQUS Upper School just completed the MSBA project and at the beginning of this school year. Looking ahead, we hope to continue our successful partnership with the MSBA through the Madison Park project. Next slide. Since the feasibility study, we have been meeting consistently with the Madison Park leadership team and staff, the school parent council, the school site council, student government, Madison Park alumni, and Friends of Madison Park to give regular updates and hear feedback. What we heard from the Madison Park community has directly shaped every stage of this project since the beginning. Some of the main priorities we've heard: to maintain a diverse array of CTE programs, including proposals for new programs with strong career pathways; to better integrate academic and vocational education; to better integrate Madison Park with the surrounding community, such as through the public-facing CTE programs, and to keep building a strong and united Madison Park community. A redesigned facility will better support all these priorities, but there's a lot we can do even before. The new building is complete to deliver meaningful results for current Madison Park students. This March, we are launching a community working group to bring together stakeholders from each of the Madison Park community groups we've been speaking with. This group will serve as a dedicated space to ensure community voices are heard through the project, and we are held accountable to our commitments. Next slide. The cost estimates we got back from our design team last fall were much higher than we expected. Roughly $680 to $700 million for a new build, or $700 to $720 million for a gut renovation. I want to contextualize these numbers and explain why they're so high. Vocational high schools are always the most expensive school projects. They require a lot more space and a lot more very specialized spaces that typical high schools do not require. We expected Madison Park to be the most expensive capital project in BPS history, and the city and BPS have been prepared to prioritize Madison Park in the capital budget. The estimates we got back in the fall reflect the new reality of construction costs nationwide, post-pandemic. We take very seriously our responsibility to be good fiscal stewards of taxpayer dollars, and so we cross-checked our numbers with other vocational schools statewide. Our estimates are squarely in line with what other vocational schools in the region have seen in recent years. Through any design process, there will be opportunities to bring the cost down. But with $700 million as the estimated starting point, the only way to get the cost down to a level that city could support on its own would be to significantly downsize the project. Whether that means reducing the number of CTE programs or renovating only certain spaces and not others. That's not a sacrifice we're willing to make. The clearest path forward to deliver a fully redesigned Madison Park is to seek partnership from the state. Last fall, we began exploring what the application would look like. Because of the extensive work we've done with the community to develop a detailed educational vision for Madison, we believe we're in a strong position to put forward a compelling statement of interest to the MSBA. I want to be transparent that seeking partnership with the MSBA will shift the project timeline. We expect to hear back from the MSBA by end of this year. If we are invited into the program this year, we would begin working with the MSBA to complete each of the steps in the core program process shown to the right of the screen. I want to recognize that for many community members and for many of my colleagues within BPS and the city, we wish this could have happened faster. Construction projects take time, and Madison Park is particularly complex, but we remain 100% committed to this project and believe that for the first time in Madison history, we have a real plan to finally get it done. I also want to make it clear that even though the building project may take longer than we'd like, our investment in Madison Park are happening now and will continue in partnership with Madison Park's school leader, Paul Neal, and the Madison Park leadership team. We are working on several initiatives, including expanded opportunities for students to get hands-on paid experiences in their fields, modernizing curriculum and technology, and increasing public access to the CTE programs. We are excited for this new building, but we're also doing the work right now to make sure all of Madison Park's current students have amazing opportunities during their time at Madison Park and graduate with a clear pathway to college or career. Next slide. Statement of interest submissions to both programs we discussed today, the ARP and core program, require votes by the school committee and the city council. The school committee voted affirmatively on the ARP submission, and we presented the core program submission to that body last week. The application for the ARP is due March 21st, and the application for the core program is due April 11th. We are confident in our applications. If approved, we expect to receive a response from the MSBA by the end of 2025. Thank you for your time and support of this effort, and we are happy to take your questions.
Thank you. Now I'll turn it over to my council colleagues for questions, starting with Councilor Flynn. Councilor, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Again, thank you to the administration team for being here, for presenting this, the work that you've done in the past. Had some specific questions, if I can ask anyone on the panel that wants to respond. Can we just get an idea of how Madison Park renovation will cost $500 million? How did that idea come up? How did you come up with that figure, $500 million?
I can start by answering that question. So we originally had a feasibility study that was done, and that was a way to assess basically the need of the school and an approximate amount of how much it would cost. The feasibility study was done years ago, and unfortunately years ago we were talking costs in the neighborhood of about $600 per square foot, and now we're looking at we have a recent project that just came in. It was $1,300 per square foot. So costs have increased astronomically since then, and when you have a feasibility study, it's not an actual design estimate. It's literally an estimate.
Okay. Can you just walk me through the process of when we apply for the Madison Park funding? What would take place with the previous design, previous work already done? How it impacts that? And if we don't get the funding, would we still use the same design and construction? And if we get the funding, obviously we'll have a different design system. Is that accurate to say?
It's basically accurate. So the MSBA has a very specific and defined process for projects when they are in their program. And so if the MSBA does accept the Madison Park project into their program, then of course they would go through their process, which they would then select a new OPM or owner's project manager, and they would also select a new design team. However, it's our hope that some of the information that we've already put together would be useful should that happen. You know, they would go back and perform a feasibility study. We have information that could help at least jumpstart. That's our thinking, that we would be able to jumpstart that process. We've gone through a lot of that already, although we are very mindful of the fact that the MSBA does have its own own sequence of events and steps. So it would require a whole new team if the MSBA does accept us into the program. The good news is that I know for a fact the design team that we're working with now, Perkins and Will, they're very much mindful of the fact that they will apply, and we would hope that they would be successful in that application, but there's no guarantee.
Was the design team, is that the consultant, or is that the consultant for the project, or?
Presently, yes.
Okay.
So we have a contract with Perkins and Will at the moment.
Okay.
And right now that's on pause because we know that we're taking this next step. And I've had conversations with them, and they would more than happily work with the City of Boston, whether it's through the MSBA process or not.
Is it expensive for a consultant or for an architect to produce a plans, architectural drawings for a new school?
Yes, it is.
What is that usually? What could that run? Is that, just give us a ballpark. I'm not sure of what the estimates would be. Is it?
I'm really bad when I do that. I'd rather, if I might, just give you the actual number.
Yeah.
Look it up and give it to you.
Yeah, that's fine.
Okay.
Yeah, it's not a rush. I guess my final question, I don't want to take any more time from my colleagues. So if Madison Park High School, technical vocational high school, I went to a technical high school in Boston, I went to Don Bosco. I know the importance, obviously, of vocational technical high school. If Boston was not selected, can you walk me through what the process would be or what the steps would be to, certainly we all support building a new high school, but what would take place if that didn't take place, if that funding didn't come through?
I can take it. So there's a commitment from both the mayor and the superintendent on the Madison Park project. Obviously, if it does not go through the MSBA process, right now the city in the capital budget there's a $500 million hold for the Madison Park project. If it does not go through the MSBA process, it's when we're gonna have to come back together as a team and look at what trade-offs needs to happen to move forward with the Madison Park project.
Thank you. Mr. Chair, I have questions, but I'll wait till the next round out of respect for my colleagues.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Councilor Murphy, Councilor, you have the floor.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you for your presentation. I have several questions. First off, how much did the Dearborn School, the Carter School, and the Josiah Quincy School cost us? Yeah, Brian, thank you. And while you're looking that up, does the MSBA already have the long-term facilities plan, or will that be required when these applications go in? I know on January 8th, 8 weeks ago, I did file a hearing order that hasn't been scheduled yet. I've been aggressively trying to get that on the calendar to address the long-term facilities plan and BPS closures. Will that be required in the application?
So the MSBA does, the long-term facilities plan is public. The MSBA is aware of the long-term facilities plan. Outside of the Madison Park project, our team has partnered with the MSBA both on the rubric that was developed by the long-term facilities plan and the facilities condition assessment. We've presented to the MSBA those standards a number of times, which they've been very, very appreciative of. So it's been a collaborative process. Specific to the Madison Park project, if the long-term facilities plan is going to be inputted as part of the core application, the long-term facilities plan is not going to be linked to the application. However, the information from the facilities condition assessment and also the rubric information will be a part, and all of the work that the team has done, like with the designers, et cetera, that is all information that is needed for an MSBA application. So that work is like strengthening has allowed us to strengthen the MSBA applications that we've been submitting to the MSBA.
Okay. Brian, did you get those? Oh, yeah, please, thank you.
Sure. Just to piggyback on what Dell said, one of the questions that the MSBA asks in their statement of interest is whether or not the district has a master facilities plan.
Yep.
So we can attach that if needed, but also it's something that they ask all districts as part of the process. So the Dearborn was roughly $73.5 million. Boston Arts Academy was $137.5 million. The Carter is estimated to be $92 million. Josiah Quincy was $223 million, just over $223 million.
And Madison Park is estimated over 700 million?
About, yes.
Yeah, about, yeah, and it's changing every day a bit, okay. So when the mayor submitted the Green New Deal, she committed to $2 billion in funding for capital projects across the district. How much money will be left over for other schools if close to 800 million of the 2 billion will be spent? It's committed if the process. And how much will MSBA kick in? Because we'll still be on the hook for a lot of it. It will be a portion. So what percentage if we did get this approved?
So let's say hypothetically the project, so right now the project estimate is $700 million. So it would be, MSBA would kick back a third of that. So it would be about $230 million.
So about $500 million will be spent. So of the $500 million that we can expect to pay at least, because we've committed that if this process doesn't work, we are still building a new Madison Park and we're not going to cut corners. So at least 25% of the committed $2 billion is going to go to Madison. So does that affect the plans for other schools that needed and will need work also?
So right now, we're taking a year-over-year approach on like what schools are moving forward in the capital budget. Right now we have, as I shared, the Ruth Batson Academy and also the Shaw Taylor. So those projects are moving forward through the MSBA. There's also the Irvin project that's being completed, but also those are like large-scale new builds and renovation. But as part of the capital budget is also doing smaller scale renovation to schools. And some of those schools that we would submit for capital budget, smaller scale renovations, are schools that was submitted under the Green New Deal as well.
Where will the new facility be placed, and what effects is this going to have on the O'Brien, which shares a campus and does share several spaces in both schools? And the projection is that we hope that we'll have 1,000 more seats at Madison Park High, and how will that affect the enrollment at our other high schools?
That's a good question. As part of the long-term facilities plan work, it's building schools, but also closing and merging schools. So as we're looking at our longer-term projections, there are schools that we're going to be submitting year over year for closing. That will close. And so as we're looking at the Madison Park numbers, I think students are going to fill those seats through we are going to continue our recruitment process for Madison Park. That's something that we've started now. So through recruitment, students are going to fill seats from closures and also the continued grade reconfiguration work that we're doing. And in terms of the building, where students would go, once the project starts and we're going through the design process, swing space is going to be a part of that conversation. So a part of the MSBA feasibility process is looking at options on like where to build. Are we looking at swing space, et cetera? So we'll work in collaboration.
So we don't have a plan yet. But what will
So-
the O'Brien be getting?
So the plan would be, as part of this design process, we already started a plan. We started a plan that the designers gave us multiple options. One of them was renovating the building and looking at
That
swing
location.
space. So we have a swing space option. We also have a new build option for the Madison Park project that was presented in terms of like building on fields. When we go through the MSBA, if we go through the MSBA process, we're gonna have to like work with the MSBA on like what those options would look like with the MSBA. As you know, it would start over. The process would start over.
But that's for,
Well,
In terms,
we'll come back around.
okay, but
because
can
your
I
time is
just,
off.
no, I know. But when we come back then, because what I was asking is, what about the O'Brien, which shares a space? And we didn't get that answer at all. So I will wait, but you kept talking about like Madison Park and swing space, which I know, and I've been on these community meetings and understand that if we rebuild there, we'll have to move them, maybe the Timothy. There's lots of things that will have to happen. But through this whole process, you know, what does the O'Brien building, what will they be getting is what. So I'll wait, but it wasn't addressed. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Murphy. I just want to acknowledge that Councilor Mejia has joined us, and we also have received a letter of absence from Council President Louis Jen. Councilor Braden, the floor is yours.
So if the Madison Park project, I look, the numbers are astronomical in terms of the inflation and cost of building anything in the city. We have facing the same challenges with housing. So in terms of swing space, you know, I think it's a very real and reasonable question that Councillor Murphy's asking is, are we focused on a complete rebuild, or are we going to do like a gut rehab? Do we know where we've landed on that piece?
So with the process with the MSBA, when we're going through like the feasibility options, the MSBA would let us know if we're going to move forward with a renovation and or new build. So it is built into the MSBA process. Yeah, we don't go in with like, this is the option that we would like.
Yeah, the MSBA.
Yeah, so
yes.
as part of the MSBA process, when we bring on the owner's project manager and the architect, we have to go through a very rigorous feasibility study. And the MSBA requires all districts during the feasibilities to look at multiple options, including no build options, addition renovation options, and new school construction options. So all those options are going to be on the table when you start the MSBA process. And the consultant team will work with the district, the school, and the community to go through those options and see what's the most cost-effective, educationally appropriate solution for the district needs.
So, so you make the submission. What's the timeline? Like, Brian, you're very familiar with this, so.
Yeah, so we'll submit in April. We'll, based upon the past 2 years with the Shaw Taylor and the Ruth Batson, we've found, we were notified in December of the same year. So we'll likely find out in the winter of 2025 if Madison Park will be approved to move forward into the MSBA process. That doesn't, you don't start design immediately. You have
That's
to go
just the
through.
start of it.
You have to go through an eligibility period, or what they call it, to complete several action items showing that the district has the ability to move forward with the project. We've done so for the Shaw Taylor, and we're starting that now with the Batson Academy.
So have we, you know, we've been talking about this for a long time in terms of, so is some of that groundwork already done from our side of the fence in terms of looking at options, and so are we in a good space for answering those questions from MSB? They'll go at their own speed.
Yes, in terms of like eligibility period and starting the feasibility study, I think for Madison Park, we're in a very good spot because of the work that was previously done with the old consultant team.
Yeah.
In terms of eligibility period action items, a lot of them are the same requirements from year to year.
Yeah.
So we've done so, we've submitted them for Shaw Taylor, we'll do so, we'll start July 1st for the Batson, and then if Madison Park moves forward, we'll do the same.
You know, we've been talking about Madison Park for eons. Can you give us sort of a realistic sort of timeline? Like we submit in April, the feasibility study starts in December, I thought I'm correct. You know, when would we get the go-ahead? Like if we're successful, because that's an if, that's a big if as well. When would we get the go-ahead to start work?
So I think if we're following the MSBA process, right, they have a very defined process. We find out in December that we're invited into eligibility period. That's a 9-month time period that the MSBA puts in place. So fall 2026, we would likely complete eligibility period, say 3 to 4 months to bring on a consultant team. We'd likely start design in winter of 2027 for a new Madison Park.
Winter of 2027?
Yeah, probably January 2027.
January 27.
And again, that's due to the MSBA process.
Mm-hmm.
It's not us holding anything back. That's us trying to move forward as soon as possible with the MSBA.
So what are our chances of getting it approved?
I think, I don't want to speak for MSBA, but the track record that the city has established for the MSBA, 43 accelerated repair projects in their pipeline, 5 or 6 core program. In the past 2 years, we've gotten the approval to move forward into the MSBA process. I think the collaborative efforts between the two have established a relationship that I would like to think that this would be looked upon favorably. But again, MSBA has to weigh this application against all the other applications they receive from the Commonwealth.
Yeah. Okay. The other question was, and I'll go back to it as well, is that the O'Brien is in part of the building, part of the complex. Like, in terms of contingencies for, I know we're not going to start this, you know, for years, but in terms of the contingencies for where we would put the O'Brien, because I can't imagine that they'll be on site with a major construction project happening there. Any thoughts on how that's going to be managed? Because I know that's part of all. It's like a big jigsaw puzzle. You have to figure out all the bits and pieces of it.
I think that would be part of the feasibility study and the work that's done between the consultant team and the district.
Yes.
Mm-hmm. Okay. And okay, that's all I have now for now, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Councilor Mejia, Councilor, you have the floor.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, everybody. You know how important you are. I came here today to ask you lots of questions. I'm curious. Can you lower my... I already got a big mouth. Is it loud? I feel really loud. Can you lower me? Thank you. So I would love to have a better understanding of the Madison Park situation. I know that my colleagues asked questions, but I want to get a little bit laser focused. If you could help me understand the timeline in terms of when you walked into the Madison Park redesign, and I don't even know who to ask. Who's been here the longest? Because we keep changing things up. Who has the most historical context about this?
I'm going to say I am, but I wasn't involved in the project from its very beginning. But I do know that there was a
When did it start, just for the record?
I'll look up the date. I'd rather give you an accurate
I think we've been at this for almost 14 years.
If that's the case, it's been in different phases. This process, I would say, didn't, you know, the feasibility phase did not start earlier than maybe 5 years ago, but I'd rather get the actual date because we have a study and I can look it up and see when that was.
So 5 years ago?
I'm going to say approximately 5 years ago.
And then when you started this 5 years ago, but I believe people out in these streets have said it's been longer than 5, but we'll start with your your historical perspective. So 5 years ago, when you entered this journey 5 years ago, what was the plan? Was this particular RFP, was that part of your vision?
I'm going to say the vision was to renovate the Medicine Park.
At what dollar amount?
That came out of the feasibility study, and there was a $500-ish million number.
Okay.
Again, I'd rather give you the accurate number instead of guessing at it. But it was in that order of magnitude. We knew it was going to be that, and actually it was higher than that. There was one thought where it was way higher. It was like $800 million. But again, when you're in a feasibility study phase, you're kind of, it's more theoretical than practical in that regard. And it's not until you have an actual schematic design that you can get to.
Was there a desire to apply for this RFP, this particular grant 5 years ago?
You're talking about for the MSBA?
Yeah.
No.
Okay, so then how did this enter into the phase of the equation?
The cost is just so much higher than, right? I would say that the $800 million number was not even a target, it was just an outside number. But there's always thought about how do you bring the number down, how do you make it more practical, how do you make it more affordable for the city. So those steps were intended, I'm always going to say, contemplated to take place.
And so what if we don't get the grants? Then what? What's the game plan? What's the backup plan?
Well, as Del said, that Boston Public Schools will then have to make decisions as to whether or not other projects we're going to continue. It's really it's an evaluation that they have to make relative to everything else that's going on. So I'm going to say.
But I'm just curious. I'm just curious because what we keep hearing is that Madison Park should, Boston deserves a state-of-the-art voc tech school. We're looking at workforce development opportunities. This is going to have a generational impact. So I'm just curious, what are the trade-offs? Because it always feels like when we're talking about Madison Park, we're pitting schools against each other, and then what's that going to create in terms of the dynamics?
Yeah, I think when looking at the trade-offs, it's not just schools, right? We're going to have to sit with the mayor and team to look at the capital budget, to look at like what the trade-offs are going to be, and also discuss with the Madison Park community. And just like one thing to share as well in terms of the Madison Park like programming and feasibility study, the team started like re-engaging the Madison Park community on the programming and feasibility study back in 2022.
Okay. So just to follow up really quick, because for those folks who follow the work that we've been trying to do, there's some confusion as to the hurry up and wait syndrome that we have here. So it sounds like we can expedite White Stadium. That is part of BPS's facility plan, right? Like we can move that at a very high rate and get it done. But I'm just curious about the appetite to do the same for Madison Park. Why have the answer? We are going to have to figure out the trade-offs. Why? Where's the commitment for Madison Park?
So I think that the mayor and the superintendent has a commitment to Madison Park. This is part of the reason why it's being submitted to the MSBA. We've submitted like the Shaw Taylor School that's being moved forward in the process, the Ruth Batson that's moving forward in the process. As my colleague Carlton shared earlier, at the time that we were looking at Madison Park, the cost per square footage was coming in about $600 per square feet, and right now, like they're seeing upwards of $1,300 per square feet for like square footage for projects. So an MSBA reimbursed the city about a third of the cost for building projects that we've seen in the past couple of years. So I think that.
All right. Just because my time is going to go up really quick. I'm just curious if you could just, for the record, I need to hear it, just what is the commitment for Madison Park? And what's the dollar amount that you're asking for the RFP? What's the dollar amount?
So it's not a specific dollar amount that we request. What we've seen over the past couple of years is that the MSBA reimburses us about a third of the cost for projects.
Okay. And what happens if we don't receive that?
So if we don't receive the MSBA, the mayor and the superintendent have shared a commitment to we're going to have to look at the capital budget, and we're going to have to discuss trade-offs to move the Madison Park project forward.
Okay, so I think what would be helpful to me, like as we continue to have these conversations, I think it goes off of what Councilor Breeden had asked earlier about the timeline. I think people have been waiting a long time for Madison Park to get its rebuilt. And it feels like this is another delay situation. And so I'm just curious, we're looking at now maybe winter of 2027. That's 2 more years before we can really be shovel ready, when allegedly we were supposed to be ready in 2025. Just so that I'm clear, we're delaying it 2 more years?
Sorry, just a point of clarification. I don't want to have any confusion about the timeline. Winter 2027 will likely start the design process.
Oh, so then that's even worse. That's even the worst answer.
I just want to make sure
me.
that's...
Oh my God, you really, no, that's even worse. So I wish I would have stayed at the 27 that you'd be ready to. So then when are we going to start building? In 2020, what, 50? When are we going to build?
It could be upwards of a 2-year design phase.
Which we already gone through a whole redesign and feasibility. Like, can't we just start from where? No, we can't. We got to start all over again.
Well, hopefully we can utilize some of the information that's been done in the past, but with the MSBA, we need to bring on a new owner's project.
So what's the? Just a hypo. Well, they haven't answered my question.
Yeah, but we're going to come back for a second round.
I just need someone could just tell me when the timeline is.
Last question.
Yeah, I need a date. I need a bottom line. When can we potentially see this building under construction?
I think based upon MSBA process, 2029 would likely be a time frame to start construction.
Wow.
Late 2028, maybe early packages in 2029 to start construction.
Thank you, Councilman Mejia. We're going to have a second round of questions. I'll put myself on the timer as well. I've heard trade-offs a couple times, and just kind of for my clarity, are we talking about trade-offs within the programming, within the size of the building, or trade-offs in terms of other capital projects?
Yeah, so there's gonna need to be trade-offs, like it's gonna be a part of like the capital budget, like what the city and the district like moves forward, what's not moved forward. And we're gonna have to continue the conversation about programming, and just like to share a little bit about that. With the current design work that we were doing to get to that 700 million number, we had our teams, collective teams across BPS and the city and PFD did a lot of work with the school team as well and the community to look at all of the programs, what programs would sunset, what new programs we would introduce. And we cut down the programming to 19 programs and 21 cohorts, which mean that like if we want Madison Park, which we need Madison Park to be like the state-of-the-art folk tech school, we wouldn't want to cut their programming anymore than sort of like the baseline that we were working with.
Got it. That makes sense. And what I'm hearing is majority of the, I guess, the ballooning of the budget came from just labor costs, or is it more, was it programming? What was like the most of that ballooning from $500 million to like $700 million?
I'm going to, if I may, I'm going to say that's largely construction costs.
Okay.
Because the program side, the goal was to keep the square footage, the amount of square footage that the school would require roughly the same. Mm-hmm. And so to do that, it was a matter of what was the proper mix of programming. But in terms of square footage, the square footage roughly stayed the same. It's the cost increase over time with construction.
Okay. So say if we don't get approved for the MSBA, we have a $500 million commitment, sounds like from the mayor and the superintendent for capital investment inside of Madison. What would that look? What would a $500 million building look like compared to a $700 million building?
I hate to say this, but I'm going to say it's the same, because when the costs go up, you get the same you get the same building. It's just it's a more expensive building.
Well, I mean, like the programs, like what trade-offs would there be within that?
Well, I think
School.
what Dell was saying was that we were not looking to trade off the programs, that the program mix is the mix that the school feels would be the right mix for 21st century and
Right.
a quarter vocational technical education. So when we talk about program, in fact, when we cost cut, the last thing we look at, or the last thing we look to cut is the program.
Okay.
We look to cut materials, we look to cut, building styles, all sorts of other measures. We use a process called value engineering, or VE, and it's been our longstanding process through many, many programs and many, many schools to not touch the program of the school as much as possible, and we haven't. We successfully have not done that.
So that if we were to not get the $700 million from MSBA, the $500 or the $200 million from MSBA, the cost savings will come from maybe the design, the material, or?
Absolutely. We would turn over every rock to do that before we would cut the program.
All right. And then, community, counselors, we want speed. I do think it's, wise for us to, try to seek alternative funding from the MSBA. Is it possible for the MSBA to just fund a portion, or do they need to fund the entirety of the project? Like, can we just go to the MSBA and say, give us, the $200 million without putting everything else on hold in order to get, Madison started a little sooner?
It's been my experience working with the MSBA successfully over many projects, both at Public Facilities Department and in the school department. I would say that's a hard no. That they're very, the one thing the MSBA is steadfast on is their process to make sure that it's equitable across the Commonwealth. And so they would not entertain, and we've asked the question, quite frankly. This fall, we talked with the MSBA a couple of times. The superintendent, Skipper, was on the call, and as well as others from the administration, and each time the answer, no matter which way we asked the question, it came back that we would have to go through the full process. Got it.
And then on our budget, our vision for the $700 million, is that for a new build? Is that for a renovation? Like, what are we intending to achieve with the $700 million?
So $680 to $700 million was for the new build, and I think $700 to $720 million was for the renovation, like the gut renovation of the current Madison Park spaces. So the gut renovation cost a little bit more.
Got it. So when we're sending up the statement of interest, we're sending it up saying we're kind of giving up a little bit of control on, our vision, right, for the Madison. Because if we wanted a new build and then MSBA said we're only going to fund a renovation,
I think.
right? No? Okay.
I think we kind of did like the same process similar to the MSBA. So we looked at like which option was more like cost efficient, that delivers the programs in the way that the community and the school needs the programs to be delivered.
Got it. All right, thank you. Now go back to council colleagues for second round of questions, starting with Councilor Flynn. The floor is yours.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Again, thank you to the administration team, BPS team that's here. And I know many of these questions have already been asked and answered, but just want to kind of rephrase again to make sure I'm as clear as I can be. But the work that was done already for architects or consultants, and if we don't get the MSBA funding, if we do get the MSBA, that work could not be used.
Not in its current form. We would be able to refer back. I'm sure a lot of the work that we've done would be useful in the feasibility study that would go forward, and in design. We wouldn't be starting from scratch in our thinking on the city side. But to answer your question, it would basically be a new process that'd be informed from the old process. And I did find the numbers that you were asking for earlier, Councilor Flynn.
Yep.
So the Perkins & Will contract was $7.4 million, and of that, 2.8 roughly 2.9 was expended.
Okay, okay. So can you tell us again what that 7.4, 2.9, can you just give us an idea again? What was that used for?
It was for full-blown design. So we had gone through the process, or we were in the process of schematic design, and looking to conclude that after schematic design, where you come up with your concepts and what this might look like and where, and then you pick a design and then go into design development, where you go further into the next phase, which ultimately would end up with construction drawings.
So does the design, that includes architects, design, engineering firms?
Absolutely. Yes.
Consultants?
All of the above.
Okay, nothing in terms of infrastructure improvements, but just more towards the drawing and preparation to potentially build a new building?
That's correct.
Yeah, okay. But you said even though we would have to start at the beginning, some of that work could still be helpful to us.
That's our hope.
Yeah, okay.
That's our hope. And even more so if, and I mentioned before, Perkins and Will is very keen to work with the City of Boston and Boston Public Schools, no matter which way this goes, right? So they are our designer of record at the moment. But if the MSBA does accept us into their process, they would then very happily apply and hope that they would get selected.
Okay. And I think someone mentioned it at the beginning, and maybe I missed it, but besides the Madison Park Technical Vocational High School, any plans for another new substantially school?
There's two schools that's in the pipeline right now for the MSBA. So Ruth Batson Academy
Yes.
and the Shaw Taylor.
Okay. What impact does the long-term planning at BPS have on the potential for building the Madison Park High School?
What specific impact does the long-term facilities plan has on Madison Park? I think that the long-term facilities plan, just taking a step back, as I think Councilor Mejia shared, the Madison Park, the new building or renovation of Madison Park has been a conversation for about a decade, and there has been several commitments around Madison Park. I think that this renewed commitment around Madison Park, that occurred even before the long-term facilities plan. So this is, I think, as we're moving forward with the implementation of the long-term facilities plan, I think the Madison Park project gives us an opportunity how it fits in is that we're speaking about high quality student experience for all of our students across BPS, both on the academic programming side and also on the building side. So this fits right into the long-term facilities plan work that we're doing as a district, even though the commitment occurred before the development and execution of the long-term facilities plan.
Thank you. And my final question would be, what impact would this have on when it is built, what impact would it have on the students during the construction phase at Madison Park and/or Theo Bryant as well? How would you prepare to ensure that students would still get a good education, and what impact would it have on their learning as well?
A part of the work, if it moves forward with the MSBA, of course, our number one priority is centering our students as part of the process. So a part of the MSBA process would be I think before the MSBA process, our team discussed how we would plan for the construction work if it moved forward without the MSBA. If we're moving forward with the MSBA process, through the feasibility stages, et cetera, we're going to have to talk about the impact, what if any, if we're going to have to find new spaces, like use the Timothy as swing space, or if there's a need for swing space options, and or if students remain in the building while the building is built like off the current site, as some of the plans have shown.
Thank you. And my final comment is I had the opportunity with Council Murphy to visit Madison Park Technical Vocational High School twice, actually, over the last 2 or 3 months. I just want to acknowledge the professional job the staff is doing there, the teachers are doing there, and also the students, you know, just seeing how engaged and determined the students are to try to learn as much as they can about a particular field, a particular trade. So just want to acknowledge the improvements that's taking place, but also acknowledging the important work that is being done under difficult circumstances. Thank you.
Yep. Thanks, Councilor.
Thank you, Councilor Murphy. Councilor, you have the floor.
Thank you. I'm going to put all mine on the record, and then we'll ask, because we may run out of time again. But I'm going to uplift that, you know, I've been a strong advocate always for strong, successful vocational education for our students. My dad graduated from Charlestown High in 1961, and that was when each neighborhood high school housed their own vocational training. So he got electrical training when he graduated from Charlestown High, you know, and at a hearing on Madison Park High last month with Dion Irish, Councilor Flynn mentioned that we both went and visited, but I did ask for us to have a scheduled meeting for the council to go back out and see the changes. I know they have a new leader, and they're trying to work really hard at making stronger partnerships in the community with our labor unions, who I want to uplift, because I know they do an amazing job supporting our students there and helping with their training. So that is next week. I hope all our colleagues are able to attend. We're going to go visit Madison Park next week. But we have to also be clear and honest that it's not just the new facilities that Madison Park needs support in. And the 2024 MCAS results, only 19% of our 10th graders met or exceeded the MCAS in English, and only 7% in math. So academically also the school, so we can invest all we want in a new building, but we have to also make real changes in the education, right? Because we can house it, but we need to make sure that the students are getting the education that they deserve. And on the costs are rising, right, by the month, the year. You probably see it. If a few months go by, you have to adjust projects all across the city with all of our capital spending. And it seems as though entering into the MSBA is going to slow us down, and it could slow us down for a couple years. Like, will it be cost effective? Because the mayor has committed to funding it no matter what, right? And if we're only going to be getting, if we even get the funding, a third of the cost, will it be that much more at that point? And could we have started earlier and not have spent more money? And is that something that you have thought about? And at one of our community meetings on the budget, there was a resident who stood up and talked about how this administration has committed a blank check to White Stadium. And the timeline for that is make sure it's built and ready by the time a women's professional soccer team has their first game next year. And I really wish that we cared that much about our students. Like, let's make sure that no student is attending a school where 93% of their classmates are not passing math, right, aren't reading on grade level. And the percentage of students now who are administratively placed at Madison Park, and we want to close to double the enrollment, is going to be another, you know, hard thing to reach. And I'm not sure if that has been part of the conversations yet either. And also about O'Brien, I know I brought it up in the first round, but I don't think the question got answered, like what happens to it. A couple years ago when the administration wanted to move the O'Brien, and their plan was to West Roxbury, and the hope then was that it would move them out of the equation with the shared facility, and then we could build either up or use that space for the Madison Park High rebuild. But part of that, there was a long list, right? There was a reason, and the reason came with a lot of work and study, and there was a list of facilities that was work that was needed, and it painted a really grim story about what the O'Brien building needs now. But because that wasn't approved and the administration backed off on that movement, it now seems like we're saying, well, their building's fine. Like, so what are we going to be doing for the O'Brien? And I had all those other questions and statements, so if we could address those.
Yep. I'll start with the Madison Park. So I think that there's a two-pronged approach here. There's the work that the team is doing, just like strengthening the academics CTE program at Madison Park outside of the outside of any MSBA process. Also introducing some new CTE programming in terms of like robotics and also an aviation elective. When looking at the enrollment for Madison Park, the district have changed the enrollment, like how students are enrolled at Madison Park when looking at sort of like students being administratively assigned, and have hired and someone that like oversees the Madison Park assignment process. So the team is actually recruiting across.
Councilor Flynn and I met them when we had our visit last time.
Yep.
And there's a person there who's working solely now on the internships.
Yep.
Yeah, so that was hopeful.
Yeah.
And I'm hopeful, but we have to deal with the data like you guys do every day with numbers, and when it comes to money, like.
Yep. And I think on the O'Brien, the current plan for O'Brien, our COO is here. The team is going to continue to do work at the O'Brien. So all of the work that falls under operations. So it's not that we're just like leaving the building as is. As we've shared as part of the long-term facilities plan, the majority of our buildings across the district, right, does not meet the quality that we've stated that we want for high quality student experience. So this is sort of like a year-over-year process and investment, not only on the capital planning side, but also on the operations side, and continuing to do smaller scale investments in our building. In terms of like any moves for the O'Brien school is going to continue to be where it's located in the short term. Any conversations about O'Brien as part of the Madison Park submission to the MSBA, our team is going to talk about that in terms of like ensuring that when any construction is launched, if it does through the MSBA process, that students are in a safe space to continue learning.
If Madison Park High is built in a different location, has there been a commitment to the O'Brien that they will be able to take over the entire space?
We have not had any sort of like long-term commitment conversation about O'Brien taking over that complex at all. The commitment is for the Madison Park, it was for Madison Park High School.
Thank you. Councilor Braden, Councilor, you have the floor.
So I want to go back to just get some sense of how much money we've spent on feasibility and design already. I didn't quite catch the number earlier, because we've been talking about redoing and renovating the Madison Park for many years at this point. I think, Carlton, you mentioned the number. What was it?
Right. So, so I mentioned the number for the Perkins and Will, the one designer solely. If you want to know the entirety of how much we've spent in the Madison Park Vocational Technical High School project, it's actually been, I looked it up because I figured you were going to ask. It was, make sure I'm reading it correctly, 5.9, call it 6 million. It's 5.996, 234 has been spent to date. That includes the feasibility study that was done with Ann Beha Associates, and also includes the money that we spent on our OPM, the owner's project manager, left field.
It's just about $6.25 million.
just almost 6 million. Just,
Almost 6 million.
Right, 5.99.
All right, grand, approximately 6 million. In terms of programs, you said that you're trying to trim back programs to make it more economically feasible, and you've gone down to 19 programs. Can you tell me what programs were taken off the list, or how drastic a cut was it?
I can share that information with the exact answers with you shortly.
Yeah. And then the other thing, you know, Councillor Murphy mentioned her father did electrical, trained in, as an electrical training at Charlestown, and the Brighton High School used to be an automotive, going back, you know, way before World War II, automotive. People went from the automotive program into the Air Force to work on planes and things during the war. So I'm thinking, what vocational programs are we offering in other high schools? Because not everyone, like if are we putting all of our vocational programs into one basket, or are we offering a range of vocational programs in other high schools?
In terms of vocational programs at other high schools, there are additional high schools across the district. A number of our high school does have, some of them have CTE programs. I can get a full list at what's offered at different high schools across the district and send it over.
Mm-hmm. So I'm also curious, you know, the whole thing about robotics is mentioned here, that they're offering a robotics. I think that's wonderful, but introducing robotics into programming and web design, web development program, and launching an aviation flight simulator elective course, all great things. But you know, some of these, especially robotics and programming and web design, web development, those sort of programs should be available in other high schools as well. So I'm curious to see when we get the list. I'd be really interested to read what's happening in other places. And then the other thing that, you know, we've Madison Park, is one of his aspirations is to support young adults who've maybe dropped out of school or graduated, to get them some certifications to give them some more employment opportunities in terms of workforce development. What are we offering right now in terms of evening courses for that type of individual who wants to get some certifications to make themselves expand their job opportunities?
In terms of folks that would like, so there's the Boston Adult Tech that's adjacent to Madison Park, and they utilize the CTE like program space at Madison Park after hours. Yeah.
And what time does school finish in Madison Park?
If you give me 1 second, I can find that answer. $235.
235. So we're building a building that's going to cost almost $1 billion, and school finishes at 235. It seems like a vocational technical school should have a longer school day, and what time do they start? They start at 7?
7:30.
7:30. Okay. It just seems that that's a huge. We're spending a lot of money on a school building, or proposing to spend a school. We need to have a sort of a different model to try and, because some of our students are actually working to support their families.
Yep.
And we need to sort of really brush off and have a really deep dive into what a school day looks like in this time.
Yeah, and I think also for the Madison Park redesign, there's 2 programs that's adjacent to Madison Park. So there's the Re-Engagement Center, and also there is the Boston Adult Tech that's there as well that utilizes this space. I think part of the work and the visioning around Madison Park is also the community, just like the community hub piece where the community can go into Madison Park and things like hairdressing or daycares, et cetera, like the community also have access to it. So it's not that Madison Park would just like shut down at 2:35, but it would be a space where the community would also have access to as well.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And my point is really more, yes, absolutely make as much use of the building as possible, but also have programming, you know, good quality programming for, and I think you've addressed it, like those re-engagement center, but having those other programs that are adjacent have full access to the building so that they can get the benefits of this huge investment that we're making as a city. And yeah, I really appreciate the information about other vocational programs in other high schools. Would be really helpful.
Yeah, I can send that over. I also have the information that you asked about what programs were we thinking about sunsetting, and what new programs we were thinking about introducing for Madison Park. I can share that information.
Okay, very good. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Just for your clarification, Executive Jones, is the $6 million spent assuming that the start of the process was in 2022?
That's correct. I don't have the exact date, but I did see that the study was dated June 2022. I don't have the start date. I can go back and get that for you, though.
All right, thank you. Councilor Mejia, Councilor, you have the floor.
Thank you. So just want to paint a picture about the amount of time that we've been hoping and praying for Madison Park. It has been a decade, a little bit more than that. And since then, we've had, I believe, McDonough, Chang. I was trying to mental notes here of all the advocacy and all the work that we've had to do. McDonough, Chang, Laura, Brenda, Casilius, and now Skipper. So in under 10 years, we've gone through 5 or so superintendents, or maybe more. We have had fits and starts as it relates to Madison Park. Like I know that then Mayor Walsh was really gung-ho with all his work in the building trades to help support and made some commitments to Madison Park. Then most recently, our mayor made an announcement in 2023 about some big, bold moves that we were going to make for Madison Park and the O'Brien, and here we are, right? And I think that it's important for us to just name those things, because what happens is that every single time we have a new administration or a new leadership or a new redesign, we have to start all over again. And that's where the frustration comes for a lot of families in terms of just the hurry up and wait syndrome that we keep just experiencing as it relates to Madison Park. So I just want to provide the level of why there's so much frustration around Madison Park. It's not just because we're creating it and want to be hostile here. It's just because the reality is that, families, my daughter was 5 years old when we first started talking about this, and she's 15, right? She's going to be graduating, and although she doesn't go to Madison Park, she'll be graduating, and Madison Park has yet to even start shoveling to even become a reality for families. So you have to understand that every single time we come and have this conversation, the delay tactics just continue to just get folks more frustrated. So I just want to name that as to why we're here. But I'm curious, Carlton, you had mentioned a meeting that you guys have had with the MSBA, and I'm curious, how many meetings has the administration had with MSBA, and who was on the call from the admin side for those meetings? Because I'm not familiar with those meetings.
So I can tell you from recollection, then I could actually give you the details if you like, dates and personnel. But I participated in 2, where Superintendent Skipper, Chief Irish, and others were on the call, and the purpose of the call was to find out from the MSBA what their parameters were.
When you say others, were there like community members, friends of the Madison Park? When we say others, are we talking
Others from-
about other stakeholders or just more administrative personnel?
Administrative personnel, or from the school department, so Dell was on the call as well.
Okay. And you know what I find to be alarming is that we've spent so much money on redesign, like $6 million. And from a fiscally responsible lens, it really hurts to hear that number and then to know that we're going to have to start all over again. What do you say to that?
Well, I would say this, so when we started off, we clearly didn't expect to be here. That, when we started, and you're correct, that the notion to renovate Madison Park has been going on for decades, as you said. But I'm just talking about the particular project that I'm working on now is the one that was in the 2022-ish timeframe. Certainly when we started, there was no thought that we would be at this point, or that the cost would be such that we would be looking for other funding mechanisms. So on one hand, it would have been money well spent if we were able to continue.
Right. But wasn't in 2024, I believe, there was BPS hired a consultant to write a long-term facilities plan for 2024, and what work have they produced so far, and what role did they play in the decision to apply for MSBA to renovate Madison Park rather than have Boston pay for it? I guess the question that I'm asking you in relation to the timeline and what you're sharing, we didn't expect to be here, but here we are. So I'm just curious, what role did the consultant play in the decision to apply for MSBA?
And just to be clear,
So-
you're okay.
So BPS did not hire a consultant to write a long-term facilities plan. The BPS team worked in collaboration with PFD with a consultant on the school
'cause
design study.
There was an article written in July 16, 2024 that states Boston Public School plans to hire another consultant to help craft a school closure plan.
That was incorrect.
Oh, so that was incorrect?
Yes,
So
the
Boston
long-term
Globe
facilities
is-
plan submitted the long-term facilities plan before that date to DESE.
Okay. That's interesting. All right, so with, Colton, you want to finish? You want to rebut? Okay. Besides Madison Park, what is BPS's plan to build sustainably new schools? Does the district believe it will be able to continue to submit projects to the MSBA's core program while Madison Park is ongoing? Will the district pay for the project itself, or is the district planning to do any other new school construction for the duration of Madison Park?
So the district plan is to continue to work in collaboration with the MSBA and submit projects. One of the slides earlier, so the Carter is on schedule to come out of the MSBA this year. However, we have the Ruth Batson and Shaw Taylor that's in, and we're submitting Madison Park, and we plan to submit more projects year over year to continue our work of delivering new buildings for our students.
And just for the record, it is fair to say that if the project is not approved, right, in this go-round, because they usually, I guess what I'm trying to get at is if Madison Park doesn't go into this program year, and if it's rejected in 2025, then it moves to another year, right? So there is a slight possibility that if we get rejected, we're going to have to reapply for the following year, and that's going to extend the timeline.
That would have to be a decision that's made collectively with like the mayor and the superintendent, as they have both committed to Madison Park and moving the project forward and having conversations about the internal like capital budget and so we might have to make some change in like what's prioritized in the capital budget currently, et cetera.
Yeah, I think what people would like to hear from the administration is, by any means necessary, we're going to build Madison Park, regardless of whether or not we get this. And we're going to look at the capital budget and those trade-offs. We're going to make some very difficult decisions, and we're going to make the same commitment that we have and the same energy that we're utilizing for White Stadium should be the same energy that we should be utilizing for Madison Park.
I think what you just shared is the commitment of the mayor and the superintendent is if it does not move forward with the MSBA, is to look at the trade-offs so that we can move the Madison Park project forward.
And not wait another 10 years.
If it does not move forward, yes.
Okay. All right, thank you.
Thank you. How many programs and cohorts do we currently have at Madison Park?
At Madison Park, we currently have, sorry.
And then when you're looking that up, I know we've been talking a lot about Madison Park, but for accelerated repairs, what do we spend for one roof or schools' windows and doors?
I would have to get back to you on exactly what that number is. It'll vary based upon the square footage and number of windows and doors per site.
Yeah, I just want to get it, let the public know, colleagues know, like how much we are getting reimbursed in the cost savings that we're actually pulling off of our capital project or capital budget with MSBA through those investments.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Brian, if I may, just on the accelerated repair program projects, we realize a reimbursement rate close to 60%
Okay.
of overall costs.
Okay.
So we see a larger reimbursement on those projects, but to Brian's point, it will vary based upon the size of the building.
That makes sense.
We currently have 20 programs at Madison Park.
Okay. And then how many cohorts?
It looks like all of their current programs are single cohorts.
Okay. Got it. So then the new Madison Park will have one less program?
That was what was in the initial, so some programs would be consolidated. Things like programming and web development, that's like separated would be
Together now.
together, so yeah. And then the proposal would be to sunset some of the programs, so sunset 4 programs and introduce new programs like biotechnology, construction, craft and labor, early childhood education, and introduce a second cohort of electrical.
Got it.
That's just to name a few.
All right. And then going back to the $6 million investment that we made over the last 3 years, should we be just thinking of jumping right into the MSBA without prior investments, knowing that through the MSBA we're going to have to, re-engage or, continue to commit resources to, what we've recently have done?
Right. So what we typically do is not start on our own. If we're going to go through the MSBA process, we anticipate that from the beginning. So for instance, when I was at Boston Public Schools, I wrote many SOIs, and we would enter into their programming knowing that we would be going through their sequence of modules, as it's called. So we typically would not start that. It was a deliberate decision to start the Madison Park project without the MSBA to try to get it done faster. It's just that we hit a different point in time. So to answer your question, we would not generally, I would even say ever, start the project knowing that we plan on an MSBA application later on.
All right. Thank you. And when does MSBA release its funds? Is it all at the end, or?
Actually, Brian can speak better to that, but
Okay.
it's not until the project funding agreement is struck.
Sorry, was that, when do they release the funds?
Right.
So during the life of an MSBA project, there's 2 times where we appropriate funds. The first is for feasibility study through schematic design, which is a smaller number. For Shaw Taylor and Batson, both of those appropriations through this body, I think they were both around $1.5 million. That allows the district to bring on the OPM and architect to do the work through feasibility study. You get to a schematic design, that's when they set their scope, schedule, and cost. that's when we come back again to the council for the larger amount of money to complete design and start construction. MSBA is pay-as-you-go, so as we incur costs, we submit them for review to the MSBA, and they pay us that percentage of reimbursement throughout the life of the project.
All right, thank you. I have no further questions, but I would like to go to virtual testimony. When you hear your name called, please state your name, address, any affiliation, and you have 2 minutes to testify. And Judith Baker, the floor is yours.
Oh, hello, thank you very much. I have submitted written testimony, which is much longer. I hope you all get it because it has a lot more information. But I want to say that actually Madison Park has been neglected until 2023. People had said that they wanted to support it, but they didn't. None of the superintendents supported us. In fact, there were talks about closing us. Our admissions were cut down and so on. Now we're in a position where I've got to make 2 points. One is, we're not talking about Madison Park. We're talking about the young people of Boston who who desperately need high-skilled jobs. And how are you going to get that? It's an economic decision for the city. It's a huge issue for their families. And it's not about Madison Park. It's about our young people being successful. And this has been going on ever since I came to Boston Public Schools, that we neglect the skills education. We lift up the college prep education, which I understand that, but we have an enormous body of kids who need skills and need well-trained. Now, the thing about skills is that modern day skills are complicated. You need good math and science, you need good English language skills. And no matter what you do about building MSBA and so on, you can start right now by giving us grades 7 and 8 at the Timilty with moderate renovations so that we could actually make sure that the kids who are coming into the trades have the academic skills to pursue the trades. If we have those kids there now, or as soon as possible, all of this other discussion is terribly important, but their academics is huge. And if we can get them for 7th and 8th grade and make sure that this is what they want, make sure they understand vocational education, then when they get into their trade program in the 9th grade, they'll be much more ready to go out and work as in co-op, to go into internships, and to be placed properly in programs that they can and want to do. I want to remind you, 75% of our students, non-exam school students, are either need language help, they need disability help, they need learning help. Those students are perfectly capable of holding down and surviving, succeeding in a skilled job. But you don't get it in 4 years. You're going to have to get it in a 7 through 12 program. So I want the city councilors to be reminded that this is not about a school. This is about an entire city culture. This is about students who have been systematically denied, systematically left out of unions, left out of all kinds of trades for generations. Kids who are coming to this country, dying to work, wanting to work and support their families, and needing the opportunity to get what they need to do that, so that they can stay in the city, so that they can prosper and add to our lively and business community. Kids who come out with good, strong skills hire other people eventually. They go to college eventually if they don't go right now.
Thank you,
now,
Judith.
I've got to make one more point, Brian.
All right.
Chapter 74, you've got to understand Chapter 74. Chapter 74 programs, which should be located at Madison Park and only at Madison Park, require very skilled instructors, state-required equipment, opportunities for co-ops, program advisory boards from industry. This is where you build your hub. And if you want to bring in partnerships from other schools, if you want to bring in night and weekend and summer programs, if you want to make this something that will partner with Benjamin Franklin Cummings and Wentworth and so on, Chapter 74 is something that every counselor needs to understand very clearly. It's expensive, but not doing it is far more expensive to the city. And thank you for your time. This is the 4th time that I've brought this up at City Council over the last 15 years. And I'm just hoping that at some point you are going to actually see it. And I also hope you read my written testimony. Thank you very, very much.
Thank you. I'd like to turn it over back to Councilor Carley to see if they have third rounds of questions. Yes? All right. Councilor Murphy, the floor is yours.
So, who is the point person for the mayor, and how many meetings have the administration had with MSBA, and who was at these meetings so far?
Are you speaking specific to Madison Park?
Specific to Madison Park, yes.
So the district and members of the mayor's team, so Chief Irish is the point person for the mayor. We have held, as Carlton shared, 2 meetings with the MSBA.
The administration has? And was it just Dion Irish on that call with the MSBA?
As far as I can remember, it was Chief Irish on the call with the MSBA,
So he was alone?
along with the superintendent.
So-
I can look,
Okay.
I would have to just so it's
Yeah.
Chief Irish, Carlton Jones, myself, the superintendent. I would have to look at the invitation
So you were
again.
on, yeah.
Yes, I was
Oh,
on,
yeah, so,
yes.
okay. Yeah, if you could get that information, that would be good.
Yep.
And something that came up, and when you talk about the programming in Chapter 74, which Judith had mentioned, I'm still waiting on the answer, but I did ask for an RFI to Dion at our meeting over a month ago about how much the district has spent on out-of-district placement, because we do. Families often win when they advocate for their child to be assigned to an out-of-district vocational high school, because they can easily prove that Boston is not going to provide them with the proper education. So if we could get that answer, I'm going to ask it again on the record at this hearing, that I get the numbers and the total cost, because on top of the education at the school, there's also the transportation we pay for out-of-district placement. That would be helpful. And what are the high schools that we're planning on closing to help fill the 1,000 seats that we hope to expand at Madison Park?
On January 22nd, we submitted a proposal to close the Maryline and Excel High School. Those are the 2 high schools that we have submitted to school committee as part of the implementation of the long-term facilities plan. That's a year-over-year work that our team will be doing. So we'll be looking at data year-over-year and make recommendations to the school committee.
So do we know which other schools we're going to close? But is it true that we don't want to share that, because then staff, families will get ahead of it? Because if we say, like, hey, in 2027, the Henderson is going to close, families will start moving sooner than to prepare for that change?
That is not a fact. And additionally, that 1,000 number, that included adding a 7th and 8th grade cohort to Madison Park High School, as we are shifting the grade reconfigurations at our K through 8. And as I shared previously, looking at which schools we move forward with year over year to merge and close, we are looking really closely at data, as we've seen that the data for our enrollment data have shifted. So with the 22% decline we've seen in enrollment, we've also seen an increase in multilingual learners and students with disabilities. Also, the current geopolitical space that we're in right now, we're probably going to see different shifts. So that's data that we want to be intentional about looking at year over year.
Okay, thank you. So there's 2 ways that this application fails. One is this body doesn't pass it, right? And the other is we do, and the application goes in, but it doesn't get accepted. but you've said several times, so I 100% believe it's true, that the mayor is committed to paying for this no matter what, right? And I've asked the first 2 rounds, but if you could talk me through the costs then, if, you know, the math behind how is it more cost effective to get a third back, but we won't start construction till the earliest until 2029. So those costs could be 1.5 billion by the time we start digging. Like, so how is it more cost effective to not just go ahead with what we originally had planned, that we wouldn't go this route?
So as I shared earlier, the administration was holding $500 million in the capital budget. The cost that we see came in is between $680 million to $700 million. When looking at that cost, right, our team collectively made the decision to submit the application to the MSBA. Are we going to see cost continue rising? I think, again, the current geopolitical space that we're in and the conversations around tariffs and et cetera, we may see cost increase. One of the things I also want to share, though, is with the MSBA, and Brian, you can jump in as well, or Carlton, is that what we have seen with the MSBA with other schools within BPS, it's a third reimbursement. I'm not sure if we can speak to if that reimbursement, what that would look like for a vocational technical high school if moved forward in the MSBA process. So we know that what we've seen over the past couple of years through the MSBA process, but I don't know what that may look like specific to. Yeah.
But, so your MSBA, if approved, pays a third. So a third's a third no matter what. But on our end, but I asked, is it cost effective? What is the math? Because we know the costs will go up. It might not, maybe, it's not going to maybe go up. So can you talk me through the justification for waiting at least 4 years to put a shovel in the ground, knowing that the building cost will be that much more, if we know we have 500 million now, and we could find more money if we're committed, and we could halt some projects that most of the community is not really supportive of to begin with?
In terms of are we going to see cost increase? Yes, we're going to see, I'm pretty sure we're going to see cost increase. In terms of why the MSBA, I can't speak to.
No, I'm not asking that, because I know why, and we've had some amazing, wonderful projects funded, and know that it's a great tool. But this commitment from decades has been that we will commit to building, rebuilding, refurbishing, whatever we need to do to get Madison Park in the position it needs to be successful. Just recently did we choose to slow down that path and go this route. And I'm asking, can you talk me through the numbers that you crunch that prove that it will be worth waiting and it's not cost effective to just go ahead with the original plan that the administration has committed to?
Carlton or Brian, if you guys just want to talk through the crunching of numbers. However, just like jumping back in order to get to the 700 million number, there was significant cuts that we had to do for the program for Madison Park. For example, cutting out the idea of a 7th and 8th grade. Also, as we're looking at the labor market analysis and what we want students to have access to, significantly cutting programs. So what we saw this as an opportunity for students to get access to more through the MSBA process.
Can you, or have you shared that with us yet about what that meeting and what was cut? Because I'd advocate for 7th and 8th grade not to be included if it means that we can build it on our own.
We can share the programs that were in the original educational program and what programs were suggested to be sunsetted and what new programs were suggested.
Some of the sunsets, though, aren't because of cost, it's because they're outdated, correct?
Yes, but
right. And the new ones are just new. I mean, it's 2025, so we have definitely different skills we need to teach our students.
Yeah, but also wanting to share that if we want a state-of-the-art vocational technical high school, right, like we also don't want a high school with just about 15 programs when looking at other vocational technical high schools. So the sunsetting of programs gives us space to add, had given us space to add additional programs as well.
Thank you, Council Murphy.
And
Council
so I
Brady?
guess I'll put
Yeah,
that
we
question
can-
on
yeah.
file then.
Yeah, and if you want to, we could come back to you for
Okay.
one more
Because
round.
I still didn't get that answer.
Council Brady, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'd like to pick up on the issue about the 7th and 8th grade. It seems to me premature, like in terms of vocational technical education. Why have we got a 7th and 8th grade in there? Those kids need to be working on general curriculum and academics at that stage. I just looked it up on the overview. Massachusetts vocational technical schools in Massachusetts may accept students starting in 9th, 10th and or 11th grades. Some schools may offer post-secondary programs for grades 13 and 14. There's no mention of 7th or 8th grades. Like, I think the notion that you know what you want to do with your life when you're in 6th and 7th, 8th grade, like you have an idea, but I think it's a missed opportunity to, if it's going to cost us more to include a 7th and 8th grade, then that's something it's not even the norm in Massachusetts to have a 7th and 8th grade in a vocational technical school. And why are we even thinking about that? We need to have those kids be in regular programs so that they can work on their academics and not. I think it's premature.
Just speaking to the sort of like school configurations that we've seen schools across the district going through. So the current grade configuration we're seeing is grades K through 6, 7 through 12, where the district have like very few schools at the pre-K through 8, 9 through 12, as we're continuing our reconfiguration efforts. I think the idea of Madison Park adding a 7th through 12th, as we're seeing a significant amount of students peeling off at the 6th grade across the district, is to give them, so that one, the students, as you just shared, should be focused on sort of like the academics portions. The technical vocational space would be more exploratory for those students, but also having a cohort of students at the 7th and 8th grade that would move up into the 9 through 12 space. But as I shared, that was sunsetted as part of the work that we were doing. That was like the first bucket of work that was sunsetted. So the $700 million that cost is for 7th and 8th grade is not included.
Yeah, no, I think that makes sense. And also, kids can have exploratory, go for half a day a week or something to do exploratory if they want to look at what careers they might be looking at, or career paths they might want to go into at Madison Park. And I think we're having trouble making sure that our enrollment levels in our high schools across the city are at the level that they don't have to go to Madison Park for 7th and 8th grade. That doesn't make any sense whatsoever. Yeah, I think if we're going out of the norm, just to squeeze them into Madison Park because it's technically called a high school, it's really, especially if we have a need, and I think we have a need for programs with grades 13 and 14 for folks that want to continue their education, maybe had interrupted education earlier in their school career, that they can continue on 13 and 14. It makes more sense to put our resources into that. And the older students who can go into career paths and go into apprenticeships, rather than thinking about the 7th and 8th graders who, they're young. I don't think Madison Park is a necessary placement at that age, in my humble opinion. Thank you. That's all I had.
Thank you. Councilor Braden, set the time for me. And I I would just love to see, more of our schools, open more hours of the week, more hours on the weekend. And I think that, absolutely means for Madison to have, to Council Braden's point, more programming, more curriculum for our older, younger adults who have left BPS. So I do agree with a lot of what Council Braden has said around just making sure that facilities, those resources are open for the general public and also younger adults who might not have, decided to go through a trade school during their high school career, but just giving them that opportunity now that they're in the real world to be able to gain those skills, gain that network, and gain that career path in order to now get a job that can produce a livable wage. And I also do think that when it comes to other schools, I think other schools do play a part. I don't think it should be on a sole responsibility of Madison to teach our kids trades or get them engaged in trades or expose them to trades. I think that all of our schools should be playing some role in it, just because Madison is going to have a capacity, right? There's going to come a time that there's going to be maybe a waiting list for Madison. And then what do we do with those students? And I think the way we solve for that is to try to stand up other trade programs, other curriculum in other schools to make sure that no one is left behind to pursue an interest of theirs. So I do believe that we should be exploring these trade curriculum and pathways in other schools as well. And that was more of a statement. You guys can feel free to respond, but I feel like Councilor Murphy has a burning question. Councilor Murphy, the floor is yours.
Thank you. I'll ask an accelerated repair question or a roof question first. Is it true that there have been some projects that needed rubber roofs for solar panels that have been stopped because of funding wasn't there? And they may not have gone through the accelerated program. It may have been projects that we were funding on our own.
So I would say there are not projects that have stopped or stopped improving on the roof because of the solar panel need. We were doing assessments of where solar panels could go in, working with a different program. It wasn't the MSBA.
Right, that's what I said. I don't think it's MSBA, but we have, yeah.
Yep. And we decided that it wasn't in the district's best interest to move forward with that, as we were prioritizing other projects within the district.
Okay. Do we know how many schools and which ones they were that we were planning on putting new roofs on?
It wasn't new roofs alone. It was new roofs for those locations to have solar panels.
Right, yes.
If we're looking at schools that need new roofs or we want to put new roofs on, that's...
No, if you could get me, and it doesn't have to be now, if you don't have it now, the list of schools that we were planning on putting solar panels on, but we paused that.
Sure, I can get that for you.
That would be great. And although I know we're talking like it's built and the school is full and wonderful things are happening and we want it open, 7 days a week, 24 hours a day, but is the BTU union at the table at all these talks? Because 65% of our school budget, which we know is a large 1.5 billion and more growing each year, 65% of that is salary. So there is a huge cost associated with paying the custodians. Would have to double that, would have to make sure if we're staffing actual,
So-
BPS teachers that they're getting paid for extra time expected to keep the schools open. And
So I actually think there's multiple answers to be had here. So the hours that we shared for, let's say, Madison, that are 7:30 to 2:30, 5 p.m., that would include the regular program daytime schedule. The building, the Madison Park complex itself, is actually open until about 10:30 p.m. with other various programs that are happening within it. Many of our other buildings also have hours that are similar to that, and programming as needed on a weekly, daily, or monthly basis is also something that is an additional charge that each school has the ability to request based upon need.
okay, like our BCYFs.
Exactly.
Exactly, yes. I just want to make sure I go on record knowing that we're going to carefully make sure that staff at certain schools are not expected to do more without getting compensated for that if necessary. And just want to touch on the, the history of how we have laid out our enrollment. I mean, back in 1974, when I went to kindergarten, most elementaries, they were K-5. We had 6 through 8. We had then high schools. Our exam schools were always 7 through 12. I was a teacher at the Murphy when we were filing the paperwork to expand to 6th grade, and that was when that administration didn't want to just take on a 6th grade. They said if you want to add, because many students, if they were, they'd have to go to another school for 1 year before. So it's like you go to your elementary school, you go somewhere for 6th grade, and then you go to, if it's an exam school. But they weren't allowing schools like the Murphy and others to take on just 6. They said you need to take on all the way to 8th or nothing, which now we're reflecting back and realizing that that's not effective. But so we're putting a lot of our middle schools now into high schools, but that's because the enrollment is so low. A couple years ago, I had asked for the enrollment at all of our buildings, and it blew me away that the massive building at Brighton High that can fit, thousands of students had less enrollment than the Kilmer Elementary in West Roxbury. Like, there's more students at the Kilmer than there are at Brighton. So the district will say they're at full capacity, but that's because the programming is just much smaller than the physical facility can hold. So if the expectation is to add a middle school just because we're going to blanketly say all of our high schools are going to absorb 7th and 8th to address the low enrollment at many of our high schools, I just hope that we reconsider that, especially because cost effectively, I'd rather be spending every dollar we can, making sure our 9th through 12th and 13th and 14th grade, if needed, are getting all of that, those resources. And I'll put the money question in a RFI.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Good. All right. Well, thank you for your time. I want to thank everyone who came to testify publicly. Thank you to Central staff. And the hearing on docket number 0458 and 0459 is adjourned.